Hello, and welcome to the Edgewood 4G podcast. My name is Chris Rogers, and I'm the pastor of student ministry here at Edgewood, and I'm joined today by Micah Kongkousconh, who is our youth pastor assistant. Did I nail the Kyle theme? Did I harness my inner Kyle with my intro?
I've been here twice, man.
Well, I was trying to fill in Kyle's spot here, and so I was like, I gotta at least start this off the same way Kyle would. So anyway, hey, so Micah, you are going to Moody, but you've got the summer off, man. How's that going?
Very nice. I don't have to worry about assignments. I do, but they're not as pressing.
Yeah?
Yeah. If I fail these, then I can just apologize to students the next week. If I mess those up, I don't graduate.
So a little less pressure is
a
what
little
you're
less
saying?
pressure.
You're saying actually doing ministry is less pressure than school?
I really like doing ministry. I don't like writing 2 pages about something I am not super passionate about.
We'll edit that piece out right there.
Who's your favorite Bible character? It's like Jesus.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So what have you been doing this summer then?
I've been here a lot. I really like doing that. We've had a bunch of different events. We'll be talking about some of those.
Yeah.
In my free time, I've been still metalworking. I'm looking at engraving, but not far along enough to actually do it.
Yeah.
I tried felt hat making 2 days ago.
Okay. How did that go?
It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Actually, I bought a blank. I made a block that fit my head, which was a weird process of measuring my head. I didn't think people did that.
Yeah.
And then I just pressed it on and then wetted it, and it took 4 hours.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
You tackle the weirdest, most obscure things sometimes.
Yeah.
Is that so? So what's the next thing? So metalworking, felt hat making. What's the next thing that's on your bucket list of things to do then?
I don't know. I'll build a house like an Amish person or something.
We're gonna definitely have to edit this.
Can't mention Amish people on the 4G podcast.
Oh, awesome.
What have you been up to?
Oh man, this summer's been exciting. I think with our students, we've been doing this series that we're tackling with our students on Wednesday nights. We're doing the story behind the story, and so it's fun because we're taking so many of these Bible stories that our students have already heard or have grown up hearing, but we're really talking about some of the reality behind some of those, and so. A few weeks ago, I tackled David and Goliath, and we talked like this wasn't symbolic or embellished the size of what David or Goliath was, but these were legitimate things, and these were real people that lived a real life in a real place and this is history. And so, what was the one that you tackled?
I tackled. Jonah.
Yeah.
I tackled the reality of sin and running away from God, and that we can't really do that. But even though we try, it's only limiting our own intimacy with Christ.
Yeah.
And so he tried to run away, but he couldn't. And so that's also encouraging.
Yeah. One thing I loved about the lesson that you did with Jonah is you kept talking about how he went down. The more he was running from God, he was physically and he was spiritually, he was going down.
He went down to the port, he was going to go to Joppa. He went down into the boat. He went down into the underbelly of the boat, down into the ocean, down into a fish. And then at his lowest point, he came back to God, and God lifted him up and brought him to Nineveh.
Yeah, so good. It was good. You did a good job on that lesson.
Thank you.
Yeah, so summer's been good. We just finished up our junior high camp and thought we would talk about our junior high camp a little bit here.
I think our dark circles should tell enough.
I can say this. We got home and I crashed out. And I got up long enough to shove some food down, and I basically went back to bed, and I slept the entire night. So I was tired.
I think I've only missed mainspring, unless it's been for family reasons or something. I've only missed it after the time I graduated Blackhawk, because I was so tired of meet and greeting everyone.
Yeah.
And then I went right there, and I'm I'm going home early. this past week I just didn't show up.
You're like,
I didn't feel bad. I was staying home.
yeah. You did your work. So, but yeah, so we just got done with our junior high camp. It was last Thursday through Saturday, and our theme was I glow in the dark. And so it was kind of cool. We did like this whole theme of black lights, and it was just this, especially the first night was a big theme with, we had a big black light dance party, and just did a lot of things that went with that piece of the theme. And so, but it comes from Matthew 5 and 5, beginning at 14. It says, "You're a light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put you under a basket, but on a stand. And it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who's in heaven." And so we took and we ran with this theme based off of Matthew 5. And we had this, it was a local missions camp. And so we just found several areas where we could serve. And with the purpose of, if you go back here to verse 16, that we served so that our good works would give glory to God who's in heaven. And so, man, our students just did an amazing job, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, hey, so let's talk about the camp a little bit. Tell us a little bit from your perspective, like what's some of the stuff that we did, and give me some takeaways that you have.
So for the service, the first day, we cleaned out a lot of the junk that we just had in the youth room. There was painting that needed to be done. And then I think 3 or 4 girls were helping Jamie with making the food for the next day for the event. And so it was just super cool. I don't think anyone thought that was going to go as quick as it did.
Yeah.
They took so much out. 2 people got stung by like bees that were somewhere hidden under the dumpster.
We're not supposed to talk about that part.
I mean, we can. But I mean, even then,
their parents signed waivers, so it was okay.
Yeah, one of them was Chastity. So
she got stung.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
I think I heard that.
Oh man. All right, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. But yeah, they took all the stuff out, even despite little injuries like that.
Yeah.
And that was super cool to see them press on. And to get it done.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to. They carried stuff with each other, so there was a bit of teamwork there.
Yeah.
The painting was one of the most like joyful sections I could see. Every so often I'd look over. Every girl that was doing that was just like singing and dancing with each other.
Yeah.
And then like contrasted by looking to the other side of the room, and there's like a boy who is like to my neck height, and he has like a giant beam that's like supposed to be a 2 or 3 man job, and then he's just slinging that over his shoulder.
Yeah, they were working, man.
They were.
Yeah. It was cool. That was one thing that struck me pretty quick, was that they were just invested in the camp. They were invested in the process of it. I didn't hear any students complaining. They knew with what they were coming into, that this was a camp where they were going to be serving in so many different areas, and yet they were just like, okay, I'm here. This is the purpose. This is what we're here to do. And so let's go. Yeah. So then, what were some of the other service areas that we did? So we served the local church by serving within our own ministry and the student ministry. What are some of the other things that we did for service?
The next day we went to for me, I know it as a memory care, but it also has independent and assisted living, just to hang out with some elderly people, some people that might not be able to leave there, and just kind of encourage them. It was really sweet to see when we actually got there that some of the elderly people there were looking at these kids like how I remember my grandparents looked at me during like Christmas Eve.
Okay.
And just like they're sitting on this chair and there's some kid just telling them about part of their day or something. And then this elderly person's just so intently listening.
Yeah.
And you can tell they needed that as much as like our students are needing to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
And so it was cool to see both sides being happy about that. They played games with them. They They did some gambling with your side of things. Mine just had like a balloon and they hit it with a pool noodle.
You're throwing me under the bus here. So
You didn't tell them to gamble.
I took half of our students to assisted living, and you took the other half of our students to the memory.
My grandmother's there, so that's why I went to that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's like 5 tables set up where there's groups of some these adults that most of them are homebound, but they're around these tables and they have got board games and they are ready from the moment we walk in. And I'm just walking around the tables checking on the students, and all of a sudden I walk by this table and there's nickels on the table.
Money on the table.
And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, no, it's no big deal. It's no big deal." They're like, we're not gambling. It's just we're using it for markers." And I was like,
yeah.
I don't
and
know
then one of our students walks out of there with the nickname Moneybags.
Moneybags.
I'm like, all right, I see what's going on.
They had a riot though.
They did.
I hadn't
Both
seen
parties.
both sides.
Yeah.
Both our students and the residents there just had a blast, and I hadn't seen so much joy and laughter. And again, we're crossing these generational boundaries, which is something that that's part of what my mission is to really help to bridge some of these gaps of generational boundaries. And
you met someone there that you used to work with their son too.
Yeah,
you told 4 or 5 people that you're like, this lady, I know her son. I'm like, awesome.
Yeah, I'm talking with this lady, and finally all of a sudden I connect some dots that from the fire department. It's a guy that I had worked with on the fire department. That was his mom.
Yeah.
And so just it's I love the way God makes these connections for us. And for me in that moment, I just took this as this is confirmation that we're where we need to be right now, doing what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
So,
and the fun part with going there is that if you just go and listen and talk to some of them, on River Drive on the Illinois side, there's these cool pointed houses near Milltown.
Yeah.
We knew the guy that helped design those. He lived there until he passed away last year.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have known that unless I just went and talked to him. He's like, "Hi, my name's Dallas. I've been a hard worker my whole life, and now I'm here."
Yeah.
And so he feels weird that he's got nothing to do. So I'm like, let's listen to this guy. And he's like, "Those houses, I built those." I'm like, "That's super cool. Those are very distinctive." And so
Absolutely.
I had a background with wanting to do design. And so him and I just struck up a conversation once. I know my mom talked to him quite a bit, but I only did once or twice.
Yeah.
But just enough to listen to him is really cool.
Well, and a big piece of that was let's just invest in people, right?
Yeah.
If we're serving,
And they did.
Our students did amazing in terms of that. And so my favorite piece of it is we were walking back out. We finished our time there and we were leaving. and I asked our students once we got outside, and I'm like, "Hey, what's the takeaway? What did you guys think about that?" and more than one student was like, "We didn't know old people could be so much fun." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm glad we're outside saying this, not inside." But no, how amazing is that to be able to bridge some of those gaps?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And then let's see, the next day,
we weren't even
that
we had
evening.
CR that night.
Yeah, we served dinner
food
for CR on Friday night, and then Saturday morning, again we got up and they worked on some of the stuff for VBS. And so it's interesting. Our students served their own ministry within the student ministry. They served the local church. They served our community, right? They invested in people. And so they did all this in a 3-day camp. And man, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's for you personally? What's a takeaway that you have?
Just how much a group can get done together.
Yeah.
That was really cool. Seeing the guys taking a stack of wood that looked pretty daunting,
Yeah.
and then they were not deterred by it. They're like, after an hour and a half, it was gone.
Yeah.
So they did that. A lot of them made the work very simple.
Yep.
They found ways to make it easier that I wouldn't have thought of, and
Yeah.
so they're just very smart thinking of how to do it.
Yeah.
So they're
One thing I
learning how to do
appreciated
things.
about them is
Yeah.
they took and they made something that you and I probably would make a job, and they made a game out of it.
Yeah.
And so I just keep coming back. They found joy,
Yeah.
right? Even in the process of some of the work that they were doing, they found joy. I just got a message from one of our parents the next day, and he was like, "My daughter had a blast," and he was like, "She's trying to find someplace else she can serve this summer."
Yeah.
And so I love that this is just, and that was what I was praying for, is that this wouldn't just be a couple days that we would get together and that we would serve, and that we would do a camp here, but that this would be a springboard into seeing the importance of serving and how amazing that is when you take and invest in other people.
Yeah. I love events that are multi-day long as well. That's another takeaway.
Yeah.
Is that, you have someone that needs help moving from one house to the other, and you go and help, and then you're like, all right, I feel good about that. And then it's like, what do I do the next day? But when you have a group like this and they help one day and then they help the next day, they can kind of see a pattern, and they can just bring that into their life afterward a bit more than if they would have just been there one day and then we just called it quits and sent them home.
Yeah.
And so I always like any kind of multi-day event, even if it's not service. It's just,
we begin setting those trends.
they get to know each other as well.
Yeah.
And so all of them got to know each other
Yeah.
a bit more.
Yeah.
We made them sit with people that they weren't typically friends with as well, and I think that helped.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I always like to be, I always give myself a couple days after an event like this before I really make decisions on how I feel about how the event went. I want to make sure I'm not making emotional decisions, but I want to make sure that I'm really taking a good solid look. And, when I started decompressing through after this camp, one thing that I really began to wrestle with was the balance that parents have when they raise kids. And I know you don't have kids yet or anything, but as a parent, there's this balance that you wrestle through with, all right, Mike, I'm to invest in my kids, and how and where do I invest in them? And I remember as a dad holding my kids right after they were born, and already in my mind I had an idea of my hopes and dreams and the type of person that they would be, and my prayer for my kids was that they would just passionately chase after Jesus, and that they would just be good people that were kind and generous and sacrifice for other people, and so I've got this idea in my mind of what of the person I hope my kids will be, and now it's my job to raise them up, hopefully moving in that direction.
Yeah.
And so as a parent now, you have to wrestle with, where are the places that I'm going to invest in my kids, this, I think one thing I was encouraged by in this camp is you can see that some of our parents are taking that very serious, and some of our students are just amazing people, and just have an amazing heart for God and an amazing heart for other people and serving them. Yeah. And so, good job, parents. I think you guys are doing an amazing job raising and training your kids up in the way of the Lord. And so that's amazing. This camp was definitely fruitful, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we want to do something like it again.
Yeah. Yeah. But, parents have been impressing on them the importance of serving. Mm-hmm. And so that's so good. So here, let me ask you this. I enjoy talking about generational differences, right? And so I'm Gen X and you're Gen Z, right? And so, how is it that your generation, I say all this, but I understand, you're kind of like an honorary Gen X, I think. You're just,
I have a lot of the values.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. You just seem like you're like an old soul, almost I think you're a boomer sometimes. You make felt hats. You're like a boomer. But
that's what boomers do all the time, is they make felt hats.
And make felt hats.
Yeah.
So, talking about Gen Z though, what's the Gen Z, the quintessential on service? How do they view service, and where do they get involved in that, and how's that look for your generation?
I think it's hard to hop into things. So it really helps when people have people from Gen Z have someone else to do it with.
Yeah.
To be able to go into it. If it's uncomfortable, you have a friend there.
Yeah.
And so that's always, I think, something that I've seen with service. It's like, hey, this person needs to move. Anyone want to help? And no one will say anything. And then one of their friends pipes up. And they're like, I'll help. And then all of a sudden we have 5 more people.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just that someone needs to take a little bit of charge.
Okay.
And so sometimes it's been other people from different generations. Like I think you guys, correct me if I'm wrong.
You're probably wrong.
You guys. But no, even the way that you talk about work, it's like I gotta get up because I have to go provide for family and stuff. It's just there's a bit more of a drive there, and maybe that'll change for Gen Z as we get older and start having more kids and stuff.
Yeah.
But there's intent and reason, and I'm not sure everyone's different with it.
Yeah.
I'm like, if something needs to be done, I'll help. I'll do it.
Yeah.
But sometimes I would like to have a buddy there to do it with.
I think your generation is so much better about community.
Yeah.
Right. I think that I believe that my generation is task oriented and future like vision, and where your generation is a little bit more now focused and community oriented. Do you agree with that?
Even on an emotional level, I mean, the joke about Gen Z is like, I have all these emotions right here, and then I'm gonna die someday. And I think I kind of take that sometimes. I think that's part of the Gen Z in me, or Gen X in me. But I think not in a church setting, but more in like a workplace setting. Like I dealt with a lot of machinist guys, and they're like, your generation's all these pansies who just talk about your feelings all the time. It's like someone with feelings is just as capable as someone who's not, but they're also thinking about those feelings as they're thinking. And so I think sometimes the feelings do get in the way of work. Yeah. And so I think that that's where that thought process comes from. That it's necessary for you. Work is necessary. I got to get this done. Otherwise, who's going to get food on this table? And then this other person's like, well, we were talking about retirement and pension kind of stuff. And it's like a lot of my generation's like, well, why wouldn't I just keep that money now and then live with that money and use it now? Yeah. But you're thinking of like, I want to not work someday.
I think that's definitely you can see the implications of being now focused versus being future focused. Yeah. And so, but if we take this to a biblical standpoint, right, which is obviously where we always want to keep coming back to, is that our feelings are valid. God gave us feelings, but they're not supposed to drive us. They're not supposed to lead us. We're supposed to acknowledge them, and they're there, and there's a purpose for them. But it's not our feelings that are supposed to be the driving force, right? Yeah. And so, I just don't think it's fair to be like, you're wrong, I'm right, or vice versa. Like, man, God created us with all of those things. When he created us with those things, he said it was good, right? Yeah. And so that means these are all good portions of us. We just have to take and find out how God has driven, or how God's created us individually, and where he's moving us with that. So, hey, let's keep this moving just a little bit. I had pulled up 10 questions to ask yourself when you serve others, right? If we come back to this junior high camp that we had on serving others. And so there's a list of 10 questions here just to really wrestle with, I think, on, is my heart in the right place when I'm serving other people? And one of them that I did take and I marked is my motivation for serving others guilt or the great love that I've been shown through the gospel? So let's talk about this, unpack this question for me a little bit. It says, is my motivation for serving others guilt or the great love that I've been shown in the gospel? And so I think guilt definitely can be a driving factor in serving. Yeah. What are some other things that you see besides the gospel? What are other things that you see that sometimes can be driving factors for serving other people?
Obligation, you owe someone. Yeah. I guess that kind of goes under guilt if you feel bad about it. But I mean, if you have a good friendship, you kind of feel obligated. This is my friend. I want to help him. Yeah. So there's that. Your parents paying for a mission camp, and then you don't have a car, so they drop you off at church, and then we make you take a bunch of boards out to the dumpster. I think that's certainly a driving factor. Yeah. I don't know. I think there's a bunch of reasons which makes it hard to say them all. But I'm sure you list any kind of situation, you can find a way that.
Yeah. How's it change though, right? How's it
Yeah.
change our motivation if the idea of serving others is biblical? We're called to take and serve one another. Christ served us, right? Even with the washing of feet and all of these things. There's so many examples that we have.
Yeah.
How does it change though when you're serving out of a love of the gospel? How do you think that changes how you serve?
Humility.
Yeah.
It's not about you. So I think that kind of helps.
Yeah.
I mean, God's will is to be glorified in all things. And so when you put your mind to work or do any kind of work and you're like, I'm going to do this because this is going to glorify God, then it changes the perspective of it. We do ministry not because it's an obligation or anything, or I don't know how the words I'm trying to figure out in my head, but I'm like, I love God and I want to serve him.
Yeah.
And that means I have to serve others.
Yeah.
Not have to, but I mean, he gives me the opportunity. Why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah.
He placed that opportunity there. I want to help.
It's interesting when when it changes from I have to serve others to I get to serve others.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like what a cool change in the heart on that. So I think as I was reading this question for myself, it's my motivation for serving others guilt or the great love that I've been shown through the gospel. And so, I take and I reflect back on my salvation story, and I know who I was before salvation, and I know the guy that I was, and I know the condition of my heart, and then I know how God just radically grabbed a hold of me and really shook me to the core. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't deserve this, right? I don't understand. So I got a great story. So one of my good friends that was one of my first paramedic partners, clear back when I became a paramedic back in the 19s, right?
I wasn't born.
You weren't born yet. Okay. Clear back in the 19s, he's one of my paramedic partners. He calls me up a couple months ago and he's like, hey man, I got to talk to you. And I'm like, what's going on? And he was like, so I was watching on the Discovery Channel, and it was right at Easter, and he was like, I'm watching, and they actually had taken the whole story of Christ's crucifixion and the torture and everything that he went through to the point on the cross, and they actually had like medical examiners and doctors and people from the medical field that were weighing in, and they were talking about physically what he was actually going through. And my buddy says he's a man's man, right? He's this tough guy. And all of a sudden he's like, I'm sitting there and I'm watching this. And the next thing I know, I'm sobbing. And he was like, why did he do it?
Yeah.
Why did he do it? And I was like, well, he did it for you, man.
Yeah.
And he was like, but why? And I was like, because he loves you. And he was like, I just don't know what to do with this right now, and he pauses for a second and he's like, wait a second. He's like, did I just give my life to Christ? And I'm like, well, here's the gospel, man. Here's the gospel. And I lay the gospel out and he was like, yeah, that's exactly what I believe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I was like, then yeah. And so it's so exciting, but I say all this to say that it's this great love that he'd been shown through the gospel. And I think when you start to like go and you look at that and you're like, man, like he went through all of that because he loves me.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden it changes my heart on when it comes to serving other people.
And it makes it easier when you read the verse and it says that he died for not just you. And then it's like, oh, I gotta go have that conversation with other people.
Yeah.
Like, you already knew that, but he discovered it, and then you're walking with him with it. And so we had that shirt for this mission camp, and it says, I glow in the dark. I don't diminish anything that happens here at Edgewood, especially in the office. There's some great people doing some great work, but it's kind of easy for us. We're in a ministry job, and then I'm seeing these students who are going into school settings, different work settings. Some of our leaders are in work. I don't think any of our junior high are working yet, or they shouldn't be. But they're going into these workplaces and they're intentionally being a light. I mean, we are too, but I mean, it feels a bit easier on paper to say that we're just doing our job. But I mean, we love doing it, and I don't think that's diminished. But I love seeing our students who are in the world, not in a ministry job, and they're still proclaiming it the same as us.
Yeah.
And that's super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of miss that about the fire department. I kind of miss the hardness of ministry, the the roughness of that life, and being able to just be confident in my faith and to be able to stand there and be that light, right? I glow in the dark. You're a light to a lost world. And so, it's so good. So here, let's kind of finish up here is, what was some of the fruit that you saw from the junior high or the junior high camp?
I mean, genuine service, humility. I saw someone was feeling sore on the last day, and then one of their friends came over and they're like, I'll go grab your breakfast. I'll bring them both over.
Oh, really?
That was super sweet. And it's a small thing, but it was at the end of a long time. I was tired.
Yeah. I didn't bring you your breakfast.
Yeah. But it's just those little things. And it wasn't, again, we made them sit with people who they weren't normally sitting with.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of this trip, they were not sitting together.
Yeah.
Nothing against each other, but they had built enough of a bond that person's like, hey, you're sore. Can I come get you something? And it was just a little bit of a genuine service moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's one bit of fruit. I think there was plenty others.
Yeah.
The service they did, even though it was scheduled, they did it faithfully. They did it lovingly.
Yeah. Yeah, I began to see some unity building stronger. There's already unity in our youth group, which is so cool.
A lot of them went on that trip last year, and so they were kind of together at times, but then they also
last year to Forest Springs?
Yes.
Your shameless plug with your water bottle?
Shout out Grant. He's not going to watch this.
But so we see some unity that's being built. We see the students living out some faithfulness. One day it was super hot out, and so we went to the Moline pool, and we're hanging out there. And it's Micah and I, and then like all of the students, and we're kind of in this in the middle of the pool.
Yeah,
and we've got this massive Edgewood students
like
that
two
are
of
there.
our boys splashing people.
We don't need to talk about that part. But one of the students comes up, and she was like, "Hey, Pastor Chris, baptize me."
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And she's like, can you do that? I haven't been baptized yet. Can you baptize me now? And I was like, whoa. Let's like talk about this, right? Let's talk about this first. But what I love is,
next she said, let's talk about it now. It's like, there's a bit more of a process.
Yeah. And I was like, I like, let's have your parents weigh in on this, right?
Yeah.
This is, if you're ready to be baptized, let's have your family here that they can celebrate with you alongside you. And so I kind of I slowed her down just a little bit, but
we gave her a date. We're like, we have one this summer.
Yeah. So shameless plug, August 11th at the Hammers Pool. If you're looking at getting baptized, we can take and talk with you guys about that and get through that. But so we've got two students now that are talking about baptism. And so I love the idea that, again, you take them away from the world for a couple of days. You really just hyper focus on what's true and what their next steps are in following the Lord. And man, you just watch the Spirit just work on their hearts. Yeah. And we see this stuff, faithfulness, we see unity, we see next steps in their walk. And so it's all good, man. It's so much fun.
I've got like 3 students where not every time I walk over to the junior high guys on a Wednesday night, do they really want to see their leader come over and ask them how their week is. They're kind of just hanging out. We haven't started anything yet, and so I kind of just give them their space. And I talk to some of the high school guys because they're coming into Mainspring. I want to give them a warm welcome and all that, and so that's usually where I'm at, but sometimes they're talking to each other. I don't want to really intrude on that. So I remembered some that were on the Forest Spring trip that we went on last year.
Yeah.
And while we were there, we talked about what we learned. We had quiet time of reading the Bible for like an hour a day, and then we would talk about it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want you guys to continue that, but I don't expect you to. I didn't say that. I was just thinking it.
Yeah.
But one of the one that wanted to come up and get baptized, and her friend are two that I would just come over on a Wednesday night, and I'm like, hey, how's your Bible reading going? They're like, I don't know. And so I was just like, do you know where to start? And they said no. I'm like,
Yeah.
how about you read James? Come talk to me about it. Come talk to your leader about it. But
Yeah.
read it.
Yeah.
And write notes and ask questions.
Yeah.
And learn about it. And so they did. And then they went through James. And then what was
So they're doing a study on James by themselves.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And so then weeks go by. They finish James. And then I realized, like, I'd heard from them for James this whole time. And then I asked them, like, hey, what are you on to next? You should be kind of done with James at the pace you were going.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, we were talking to each other. We moved to Proverbs. I was like, super cool.
So this is junior high. Like, this is what you have to remember.
Yeah.
Like, this is junior high students that are now, you gave an example. You kind of gave them a challenge. And
And you do it with them
Yeah.
as well. I'm like, I'll read James. You read James. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
And so we did.
Dude.
And now they're doing it with each other, doing it on their own. I think the one that wanted to be baptized, she was like, I have 2 Bible reading plans I'm going through right now for different parts. One's Old Testament, one's New Testament. I'm like, that's super cool. I wasn't doing that in junior high.
Oh. Yeah. So I love how God is working in the student ministry. Let's spend like 2 minutes. So we're getting ready though, and next week we leave for Belize, and so we're taking our high school students to Belize. What are you excited about Belize? Because have you ever been out of the country?
Nope.
First time out of the country.
Yep.
Oh man, you're gonna
Been in the
love
ocean,
this.
if that counts. I don't think
Close
it does.
enough.
International waters.
So what is? How are you feeling about then? First time out of the country, we're going to Belize, mission trip. How are you feeling about it?
I have no fears.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm ready to serve, but I think we asked on Sunday morning with our group, for those who were going, what are they excited about?
Yeah.
And a lot of them said different things. For me, I was like, I don't know these people. I wasn't there 2 years ago.
Yeah.
When they went, because some of them were like, I'm excited to see this specific
Yeah,
kid
because
again.
half of our students
Yeah.
half of our high school students went there 2 years ago, and so our students are excited to take and see the students from down there again, and they built some great relationships with them, and excited to rekindle some of those friendships. So
Yeah.
you just don't have that reference then.
I really don't. So my answer was same as why I was excited for this camp is I just get to see our students thriving,
Yeah.
sharing the gospel with others.
Yeah.
And so I think that's my main goal while I'm down there.
Yeah.
Even on paper, Kyle assigned me to just make sure the students know what they're doing. I'm like,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I think it's just a blessing upon blessing if I get to talk to someone down there, and I certainly will.
Sure.
So it'll just be a blessing of a trip, a long trip. I don't remember what plane travel is like. Not worried, but I'm just like, I think it'll be a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to be on the 5th. We'll be getting back on the 13th. We actually won't be back into the Quad Cities until like 2 a.m. on the 14th. So prayers would be awesome.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's ways for you guys to take and walk alongside us while we're living on mission. We're taking the gospel to the nations, to pray for our students for boldness, to pray for our students for unity, to pray for our students for opportunities to share the gospel, to share the hope that they have, for our students to take seriously being a light on a hill, right? And looking different. And sharing the hope that they have, but be praying for the people in Belize that for God to soften their hearts, then to draw them to Himself and to prepare them to hear the gospel. But we just also want to be encouragement down there. Pastor Nehru is awesome. So I was down there 2 years ago,
I've heard
and
only good about this guy.
yeah, Pastor Nehru is ministering in a tough place, and he's got an amazing heart for the church, but he really has got a cool heart for students, and so he's well known in the area by the students.
Good.
He loves them, and so we pray that we're an encouragement to to Pastor Nehru to continue in the ministry he's doing, and that we can get these students connected into his church or into a local church down there. And so we're not the ones coming down, sharing the gospel and leaving, but we're really working to connect them with the local church down there so they can continue to be ministered to. They can be continued to get challenged and fed. Yeah, cool. Well, awesome. You got anything else? Thanks for joining us again. Your prayers for our student ministry as we go down to Belize would be appreciated. We love you guys, and thanks for joining us with the 4G podcast.